Hello and welcome to Money, Faith and Finance. New season, Pete Burrows. You are Pete Burrows, who is an accountant with individuals and small businesses with Lower, Russell and Farr at Penrith, if I'm not mistaken.
You are not mistaken.
Great, because it's been the same way through the back catalogue of Money, Faith and Finance. Here we are at the start of a new season, and we're going to talk about building wealth across the decades.
Yep.
I also want to give a shout out to Michaela. Thank you very much, Michaela, for getting in touch. You can always do that, hopepodcast.com.au. Reach out to the Money, Faith and Finance team with your question, your comment, your query. And Michaela's was a ripper, and you actually posted this in the Facebook group.
I did, yep.
A response already, but let's just do it on the podcast now. Should I make voluntary payments off my HECS-HELP debt as soon as I can? What are the financial benefits of paying extra payments, Pete?
Yes, I gave a long-winded yes and said you should pay it. The financial benefits of doing so are you pay less interest on your HECS debt because HECS actually attracts a little bit of an interest charge. So that would mean you could probably pay it off quicker and move on with your life. I also touched on the fact that I've noticed when my clients go to get a home loan or any sort of finance, a HECS debt is often shown as a liability and may need to be cleared before they can get a home loan. So there's definite advantages to paying it off for current you and also future you. So it was a great question from Michaela, the kind of thing we want to hear her on the pod.
Mate, that was a very long but detailed yes. Right. Appreciate the nuance that you put into the word yes.
Yeah, it's long-winded because I just did it in one breath. I didn't breathe.
Instead of just saying yes.
Michaela, yes.
Thank you, Michaela. And please get in touch, hopepodcast.com.au. We are here to serve you in the practical and profound of money. And you just touched on future self and past self and all that kind of stuff and paying off debt and superannuation. And you didn't say superannuation, but we're going to get there.
Super's never too far from the conversation.
We're going to get there because building wealth across the decades, are you suggesting to us that we should take different approaches to money depending on our age, Pete Burrows?
I think it's the same approach, but it might be different strategies and tactics.
Hang on, what? Now, you just said, no, that's different then. That's not the same. You can't say same but different.
Mate, approach was your word, not mine.
Okay. So nuance this for me then. So do you take the same approach, but you take a different strategy?
Same attitude might be a way to think about it.
Right.
You know, your attitude might be, I want to make money work for me. I want to be responsible with money and gradually grow my wealth that it helps me do the things I want to do in life. So you keep that same attitude, but you might have a different approach to it as you go through your 20s and 30s. You might be single and ready to mingle. When you're older, you might be settling down and having a family. And as you get more towards retirement, you might want your savings to work for you and be able to draw down on them as you retire. So it's going to look different at different stages of your life.
As I'm in these different stages of my life though, and the various factors that I consider, some of them you just touched on there, do I consider the ones that are directly relevant to me in that age and stage, such as in my 20s, and I'm thinking about whether I want to get married or a house or whatever it might be, versus thinking about future Ben, what's he going to be doing when he's in his 60s? Like, which factors am I taking into account at what point?
I think you always need to care about your current circumstances, and future is often easier to think about the closer we get to it, would be what I would say. So, hindsight can't be a strategy. You can't say at 20, geez, what am I going to want to know at 40? Give me the wisdom now, Ben. Oh, mighty, Obi-Wan.
Can't do that, Pete.
Can't do that, unfortunately. No. So you need to address your current circumstances. That's why Michaela's question was a great one. She's got a HECS debt. What do I do about it now? So she's addressing it now, but that's also going to help her later because she will have paid her debt off quicker. So you can make decisions today, and the best ones, I guess, put in the building blocks that mean future you will actually be grateful for them as well.
I think often in this sort of conversation, Pete, we are thinking about when we're younger, or at least younger than now, or we're not thinking about our future selves because we're thinking if we want to maximize and build our wealth to whatever extent, we'd have to start now. We should have started yesterday.
Or 20 years ago, yeah.
Or 20 years ago. Yeah. But what we're talking about is basically when we're younger, aren't we?
Yeah.
And so if I'm older, let me just cut forward to that. If I'm older, what do I do?
It's not too late if you're old. So I guess, the good and bad thing about money is every day is a chance to get it right and a chance to stuff it up. So even if you're older, you need to think of that next day as a reset. If you haven't felt like you put enough money into superannuation or paid off your house yet or saved enough, well, guess what? Get over yourself and tomorrow's another day. You can always start. You can start something small. You can start something sustainable. It's never too late.
So now going back to younger, and let's say younger than us, Pete.
Yeah, okay, let's say that. Which is a rapidly expanding group of people.
I was going to say there's like a handful of people that are younger than us.
There's like 3 just in this room.
But how could you maximize money when you're younger, particularly in contrast with the older picture that you just gave us there?
Yeah, look, younger people often have lesser income, but they also have more time on their side. and less overheads. So if you're living at home or your costs of living are cheaper, you can afford to take more chances with your investments because you've got more time to ride them out and you've got more time to recover. So often I would say to my older kids or people I know that are in their 20s, buy some shares, do some investments, put some money in a high interest earning account. You can actually do those things in your 20s because you mightn't have the overheads and the costs that you might have later in life. Family, mortgage, responsibilities. You don't have those, especially if you're fortunate enough to be still living at home.
What do you think about some of the suggestions in the Money, Faith and Finance Facebook group? Thank you to everyone who got on board there. A big comment trail happening when we were talking about this subject. And there was a lot of advice to past selves, that kind of thing. But everything from Derek weighing in saying start investing in ETFs earlier, like in your 20s, or start hard to access savings accounts with like $10 going into it every week. That sort of suggestion. Other ones, there are a few suggestions from Tara, and I've got to find the other person who's, I think it was Kim, talking about wanting to be more generous. So we're talking about building wealth, but they would like to say to their younger selves and to, I guess, anybody else who's younger than they are now to try to be more generous. But how is that a strategy for building wealth?
You might have to put it the other way first and say if you'd built habits and built sustainable habits that meant you had more money available, you could be more generous. Yes, I think you should have the attitude of generosity first, but wouldn't it be great to be able to say, you know what, I've actually saved and invested and done all right. It is actually easier for me to be able to be generous. I've actually got money left over that I can give to the causes that mean something to me. And if you start that earlier, and I think somebody might have mentioned in the Facebook group about, it's never too early to get a sponsor child. I think that's true. Like I got one when I was in my 20s and it's just kind of been there. It's just money that I've just kept giving regardless of how my life's panned out and finances up and down. I've had the sponsor child. So
that's cool. That's like sharing the wealth that you might be generating along the way.
And yes, the cost has gone up, but the cost hasn't gone up ridiculously. And in that time, I've spent money, wasted money, invested money, had good and bad financial decisions. But that one that I made and stuck to, I haven't. They've had access to my money. It's helped, hopefully, lots of different kids over a long period of time.
Mick's straight up suggestion was buy dirt, various locations, and also make sure it's dry, according to Mick.
Yes, or not climate affected in any way.
That's a pretty straightforward how to grow your wealth.
I assume where Mick was headed was the buy dirt that's probably one of those hindsight things, is especially the way property prices have gone in Australia, is with hindsight, if you had a property or could buy a property, it's generally been a good capital gaining investment. So the earlier someone wants to do that, if that's important to them, probably the better.
Because the horse might have bolted on that for some people, but then, and you've already touched on it a few times, and Kim in the group does as well, superannuation. And the whole chestnut of, if only I'd started on superannuation sooner.
Yeah, look, definitely.
Even though it's boring and I just want to go to sleep talking about it out loud.
Having a good retirement and having money to do things in retirement, nobody's ever said to me that's boring.
Oh, yeah, that doesn't sound too boring. But super sounds boring.
It does. Look, it's an exciting word, super. They could call it 401k like the Americans do. That means nothing to me. Super at least sounds exciting, like it's super.
Let me further clarify. Superannuation.
Superannuation is a little, that's a little bit more boring.
Yeah.
Basically, people starting work today will never know that super started at, zero for probably our parents' generation, and it started at 3%. Somebody that's starting work today or next year will get super at 11.5% or 12% of their pay. They will actually have their whole working lives where 12% of their pay is being put away into superannuation. So they will get excited about it. If you told me 12% of my income's going somewhere, well, guess what? I'd get invested in it. I'd find out about it. And that's going to be great for future generations.
Love getting all these comments in the Facebook group. If you're not a member already, head across to Facebook, Money, Faith and Finance. Catherine points out that she went through into her 50s and started weighing up the insurance that she has and reconsidering whether I need that or not, particularly at this different stage of my life, which I think can be one of those things that, depending on 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, wherever you're at, can be one of those set and forget things that we don't necessarily return to.
It can, and I think it's one of those factors you talk about. When you're younger, it probably makes sense to, insure your income, insure your dependents. As you get older and your assets grow, your needs change. I generally find you could probably have less insurance as you got older. The question is, if we aren't engaged enough with the process, that insurance will become a bit of a set and forget. So definitely insurance is one of those things that I think as you get older, you'd have to look at it and say, have I got enough income and assets that I don't need the level of insurance I had when I was younger?
As we're talking about building wealth across the decades, Pete, and Catherine also lets us know that in her 50s, she went to a financial planner because earlier, 30s, 40s, and before that...
Too busy.
Didn't feel like they had any finances to plan.
Yes. I don't have enough money to come to your office.
Financial planner, how about that recent episode? So across the Hope Podcast Network, our sister podcast, She Wasn't Born Yesterday, Janet and Amelia do a bang-up job of doing all sorts of rich conversations and wild conversations for 40-plus fabulous women. On a recent episode, there was Michelle Stone, who was a financial planner. And I think, Pete, she was crowned like the best female financial planner in Australia.
It's decent.
Which gets us thinking, doesn't it, of like, why wasn't she on our show?
Yeah, that's right, yeah. Thanks, Michelle.
Thanks
We're here all week.
Hey, we're supportive of wherever Michelle turns up in the Hope Podcast Network, and she did a great job. She works with Feel Good Financial Planning. And one of the things that I know stood out to you, jumped out to me, and the clip's online, you can go and find it in the various Facebook group, She Wasn't Born Yesterday. Michelle talking about when it comes to what you want in life and what the wealth is that you're building towards. She used a figure of $3 million and said she would challenge that if someone walked into her office at whatever stage and said, I want $3 million. She would ask why, and then keep interrogating that to get basically down to the bottom level, which we've talked about a lot here on Money, Faith and Finance, which is why you're doing that, what's motivating you. And she's coming from a place of arguing for your own happiness and well-being and contentment, which was awesome.
Yeah, it's great,
Why isn't she on our podcast? Michelle, we know you're listening. Come back and talk to us at a future point about happiness in financial planning. But you can listen to the full episode, the full interview. She Wasn't Born Yesterday. It's a cracker. Okay, Pete, now back to this cracker. What, if I didn't do some of the things that we're talking about? You've touched on this already, but I can start feeling a little bit like I missed the boat. And it's too late for me. And it's all over, Pete. And it's just rapidly running downhill. And come on, mate, I've only got seconds to go.
Seconds? Well, if it's seconds to go, then let's, gloves are off. It doesn't matter. Who cares?
Oh, okay, that's it. Thanks. I thought you might have something more uplifting for us.
If you've got more than a few seconds, then I would think start small, start sustainable. I think the problem is, and I have seen this even with myself and with clients, the temptation if you leave it late is to play catch up and take bigger risks and probably unreasonable risks where people need to get to that. They might pick the 3 million number and go, well, I've only got 10 years left of work. I need to place some pretty big bets to get there. Well, the problem is that does increase your risk. So I think the temptation is don't chase the risk too hard, but look for something sustainable you can do that you can keep up that will build towards that goal. And remember, if you're working, you're still going to have superannuation, and your superannuation towards the end of your working life will be being paid in at a higher rate than it was at the beginning. So it's not too late to lose hope.
Before we add a neat bow to this and you show me the money in this episode, Pete, do you think it's possible, given all the sorts of circumstances that we individually are in, to categorize the decades that we live in? So 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, etc. Do you think there is something common in each of those decades, whether I am a cleaner or whether I'm a lawyer?
Look, they're all going to have challenges. The decades have all got the same amount of time in them. I know I'm an accountant. I'm sounding like an accountant now. Like they've all got 10 years in them. So there's all the same amount of days. You've got a lot of time in each decade to make mistakes, but you've also got a lot of time to make habits and to make a difference. I tend to think of them not so much as hard and fast decades, but stages. That's what I was saying before. Like, your 20s could be education. Your 30s could be procreation. Your 40s and 50s could be operation. You're working.
Oh, not having operations.
Hopefully not. Depends on your health. And your 60s and 70s could hopefully be recreation. So each sort of decade or stage could have its own different little vibe to it. The common theme will be you're always going to need to be responsible for your money. You can't duck it. You're going to need to think about it and interact with your money every day of your life pretty much. So I think the earlier in life you can get a habit and get an attitude towards money, you just roll with that throughout the rest of your life.
Oh, speaking of the vibe, was that show me the money moment just there?
Yes, I'll take that. I mean, I was going to say basically every decade has its own vibe. Some of these decades are going to go faster than others, but you need to pick something, build it, stick with it.
That was building wealth across the decades. Thank you very much, Pete Burrows. You are an accountant with individuals and small businesses, Lower, Russell, and I almost tripped over. Let me back up.
There's a lot of words,
and Lower. Individuals and small businesses, Lower, Russell and Farr, Penrith. Nailed it. Also nailed that episode. We'll be back on the next one to talk. What are we talking about again on the next one? Do you remember?
Something important, yeah. It's about what we worship.
Good, I was playing mental catch up to remember. We are talking about what you worship, because I had this great conversation that got down to worship and money, and we need to talk about that, and we will on the next episode. Before then, get in touch, hopepodcast.com.au. Anytime, we are up for your questions and queries and
100%.
comments. Would love to help you out wherever you are at. Oh, And subscribe if you haven't already. I don't know why we need to say that though. Do we need to?
Do we?
Like
More the
what
people
are
that don't know, yeah.
And the star rating thing?
Oh, 5, of course.
Yeah, but do we have to say that?
You've said it now.
We have. Yeah, great. And we'll see you on the next episode, Money, Faith and Finance.